Good evening and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. Welcome back, Andrew and Johnny, this evening. And we are now so close to Super Bowl 58. It's going to be an amazing occasion over in Las Vegas. The finalists being the Kansas City Chiefs coming up against the San Francisco 49ers. A Super Bowl, I feel like I predicted. Apologies. My light bulb in here is it may occasionally flicker. There's something wrong with it. It's fine. And it's not fine. It'll be okay. Don't let it distract you. I suppose people who are listening, it doesn't matter to you either way. Or people who are watching, don't worry about it. It's not you going crazy. You don't have an epileptic fit or anything like that. It's just a light bulb. Anyway, the Super Bowl. It's round the corner. The Kansas City Chiefs, San Francisco 49ers. Like I said, I'm sure I predicted this Super Bowl somewhere, Andrew, in an episode. And I went through a few going, there's got to be it somewhere. Somewhere I can clip up that I predicted this Super Bowl. But was I unique in that? I feel like you maybe said that as well, maybe? Or am I wrong?
I mean, before the season started, to say it was going to be Chiefs 49ers, I think they were two of the favourites, weren't they? So, we haven't been anything groundbreaking if it was at the start of the year. If you started to say that once the Chiefs started to struggle a little bit, then fair props to you. You've nailed it and stayed faithful to them.
Wow, I mean, Johnny, is he trying to sound a cop out? Is that what he's saying? He's saying, Pete Schrager predicted this at the start of the season. He's trying to say Pete Schrager's a cop out now as well.
But it's not a cop out, is it? It's just before the season started.
Straight back.
Heavy favourites.
Well, we are going to obviously, we'll do a Super Bowl episode next week, which will center around both the teams. But this episode, there's no point us doing this about them teams and then repeating ourselves more in the next episode. So we are going to really focus on the losing teams of the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship. And we'll begin with the Chiefs-Ravens game, Johnny, a 17-10 win by the Chiefs. The Ravens heavily favored by all of us. We all said the Ravens on the podcast as well. Not quite the Baltimore Ravens we've seen all season in this game.
Yeah, simply put, the offense wasn't able to do anything really against the Chiefs on Sunday. And kudos to the game plan that the Chiefs defense, their offensive coordinator Spagnuolo, what he brought, really confused Lamar Jackson, and ultimately led him to make those plays, the interceptions, which towards the end of the game anyway would seem to cost the Chiefs. But yeah, the Ravens defense played as well as they have throughout this year. Despite, I think, the opening touchdown from Kelsey, Kyle Hamilton had a great game. Roquan Smith as well, Patrick Queen. These names who we talked about, still were able to shut down the Chiefs, pretty much. But the offense wasn't able to create anything, and that caused the Chiefs, with Mahomes, Kelsey, to stay on the field, and ultimately prevailed. It was a game which the Ravens, if a couple of things had gone their way, such as the fumble, some of the penalties, obviously the interception, it really coin flip. I mean, obviously the Lamar interception was pretty poor right at the end of the pass to Isaiah Likely, but the Ravens could have very easily won this game. But yeah, the game plan from the Chiefs defense, I think, is what has won the game, and Spagnuolo, I think, goes down as one of the great defensive coordinators, getting his team back to the Super Bowl. Particularly when there's been patches of this season and the last couple of years where the Chiefs defense has been their weakness. It's definitely their strong point at the moment.
Yeah, Andrew, focusing on the Ravens, I mean, it was tough sledding for Lamar. I mean, the end 20-37, 272 yards, touchdown, interception. He rushed also 54 yards. And it felt like it just wasn't clicking in place. Did we finally see really when you don't have big time receivers, the problem with that? I mean, Zay Flowers had an all right day, but we'll go on to more about Zay Flowers probably in a minute. Mark Andrews was back, but obviously this is his first game back since he's been on IR. Likely he's been decent, but then you look at Nelson Aguilar, Rashad Bateman, OBJ. None of these names really stick out. I think that maybe the lack of talent on the offense, which which we haven't really, it hasn't been the narrative for most of the season because they've been pretty good on offense. I think that sort of came back to show in this game.
No, I don't think it's the lack of talent they had at wide receiver. I think the wide receiver game is fine. You could argue that with the Chiefs, and they are now in the Super Bowl. I think the issue you've got with this Ravens team is they didn't stick to the game plan that they've done all year round. I think that's the problem. For some reason, they've decided to come into this game and go, do you know what? We're not going to run the ball. For a team that had the most rushing attempts in the league, the most rushing yards in the league, I think the next team below them, the Bears, were like 250 more yards more than them in the whole entire league. They were third in yards per carry for the season. And I think they had the second most rushing touchdowns, and then decided, you know what, Gus Edwards, have 3 carries. Justice Hill, have 3 carries. I think Justice Hill's first 3 carries were there in the first drive as well. And then Zay Flowers, obviously, with his 2. I wouldn't necessarily class all of Lamar's as designed rushing plays either. I think there was a lot of scrambling around in those carries that he had. So I just don't understand the game plan of moving away from that rushing game. You know, Gus Edwards in the last 4 games of the regular season had 59 carries and 3 touchdowns. You know, why in the world did they go, let's not do it? It's not because it's not as if they were ever massively behind in this game to the point where they're like, we're so far behind, we're going to have to start throwing the ball to get ourselves out of trouble. Because as Johnny said, the Ravens defense showed up. It played well. It gave them good field position. But for some reason, they chose just to throw. And also, if you look at, I talked about Gus Edwards in those last 3 games. Isaiah Likely had 6 touchdowns in his last 6 games. And then they've gone, oh, Mark Andrews is back. We just won't throw him the ball. Because I think he caught 2 passes, and the 2 that he caught weren't designed plays to him either. He was just open at the time. So, yeah, just really moved away from what worked for them to get there and be the heavy favourite. So really bizarre game plan.
Why do you, Johnny? Why, in your opinion, did they move away from that game plan? Because Andrew's very right. When you look at the stats and you look at the way they play, that's how they played for a lot of the season. They've been very successful in the end of the season with that. Why do you think they moved off of that game plan? Do you think there was a reason for it? I think element involved. It was, it was a big
potentially. Yeah, I mean, I'm exactly the same, camp as Andrew. I cannot understand why. I was fully expecting going into watching that game that they would just be running the Chiefs to death, doing what they've done throughout the season. And, we know Lamar's a very capable thrower. We've not taken away anything from that. I think, the game plan didn't match, what the opposition was doing. And we saw that throughout, just the amount of coverage that was on the Ravens receivers. Brilliant game plan from the Chiefs, but really sort of confusing. I think that's one of the elements of it is coming in and trying to surprise your opponent. But yeah, as one of the best offenses in the league, backed up by a brilliant defense. I think you've just got to stick to your guns, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in the next game. But you've got to stick to the formula that works. I think unless you're coming up against an undeniable, supremely better team than you, and I don't think the Chiefs necessarily were. The Ravens were heavily favoured, and I think ultimately, the offensive plan led to their downfall. But that's the annoying thing is that the Ravens could have very easily won this game. Despite how poorly they played, Zay Flowers was brilliant. He's going to be haunted for the rest of his career by that fumble, and whether or not the coaches have any part to play in that. But I'm sure they will have instructed their players to go down in those sort of situations, particularly with the game on the line. But individual mistakes cost the Ravens. And it's ultimately cost the place in the Super Bowl.
You can even argue in this point, just before you jump in, Fred.
No, it's okay.
The blueprint for this game, these are massive organizations, big NFL teams. If they'd have just watched the tape from the Bills versus the Chiefs, they would have seen Josh Allen, 12 rushes, 72 yards, 2 touchdowns. James Cook, 18 rushes, 61 yards. The blueprint was there for them to go, oh, they've got a rushing quarterback and a good running back. It worked. It really doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
We'll move on to Lamar in a moment, but I will go back to Johnny. Well, not back to Johnny, but go back to Johnny's point with Andrew to talk about it with Zay Flowers, because it was the same drive with his taunting penalty and then his fumble. And I know Johnny said about it will haunt him, but I said it on the group about this taunting stuff. You know, I don't care. I know sport's sport. And I know it's passionate and it's driven and you get lost in the moment sometimes, but I'm really sorry. When you are in them big moments in big games, you have got to realize the occasion. You have got to realize what's happening, and you've got to have the mentality that any little tiny slip up will cost you a game. And for me, I'm sorry, I thought the taunting penalty was a massive factor in that. Now, I always do say that that you can't specifically say one moment, because you can't say that moment lost them the game. That's what I mean. I do believe that little moments do cause factors in the game, but I don't believe that you can go, right, they lost the game because of this issue. But Andrew, what's your opinion? You're a man who plays sports to quite a high level in your youth. I mean, you do now. It's at the same time, I suppose. What do you think on that factor? And what do you think about that penalty in general as well?
I think it's unacceptable, really, to get done. They all know the rules. They all know what the taunting penalty is. And especially at the level it is as well. I think what I noticed the most, when defenders make their big sacks or plays or anything like that, they do the play, they get up, they move miles away from the quarterback, and then they throw a big symbol sign, a slam, or whatever it is that their little move is. And you're not going to get a penalty for it. So I don't understand why he stood over him, threw the ball, gave it some beef. Like, he could have just celebrated with the fans or the TV screen or something like that, and still got the same energy and buzz. But yeah, I suppose he's young and he'll learn from his mistakes and only get better. You can see obviously it riled his teammates up a little bit as well, which isn't great when you're pushing for that victory. So it definitely, you're right in thinking that it was a bit of a turning point, because there was a few little mistakes like that, and then they're going to chip away at you eventually and cause you to make more mistakes, which we saw. So unacceptable to do any taunting for me. I think they know the rules, even if your emotions are high.
Do you think the rule's a stupid rule though, in general?
Well, I think if it's not in place, that could get out of hand, and I think it's disrespectful to a point to be doing it in front of someone's face when you're celebrating. So I know why it's there and it's in place for a good reason, but you could argue obviously what he did wasn't causing any issue or problem. But imagine if that rule wasn't in place, and the square offs there'd be fisticuffs on it would turn into the hockey, wouldn't it?
Do you think, Johnny, I mean, the one thing that they talk about Zay Flowers doing taunting, I mean, the Chiefs were not victimless in this. They were very, very much going after the heat. They were messing with Justin Tucker before game. Yeah. They were getting involved. Kelsey won a few penalties that he was clearly milking. Like, what do you think about that?
I mean, it's all part of the game plan of getting into your opposition's minds. That's something you see at sport at every level, and whether you like it or not, I think that it does have a role to play, whether that be players, coaches. I mean, the taunting aspect of itself, Zay Flowers knows the rules, and my opinion on it, I'm happy for players to celebrate big plays or big tackles, a touchdown, etc. But if you know that it's going to cost, I mean, it's going to cost you a significant amount of yards, particularly on a drive where the Ravens are down. That in itself completely goes against the sort of momentum edge that you're trying to gain from taunting. And it's a disappointing rule, because I like that edge in professional sports of not like I say, you don't want to see any sort of fighting or anything to put anyone else in danger. celebrating to a big win. I remember back in my rugby days, whenever you'd win, the small things like a scrum or a turnover at the ruck, you'd be doing that in the face of your opposition. But in the NFL, it has consequences, and you have to respect that ultimately. So he's got no excuse for doing that, knowing full well that he's going to be punished, and it doesn't matter whether I disagree or not, or whether he disagrees or not. It's going to get punished, and that ultimately didn't quite cost in terms of the scoreline the Ravens, but it definitely had an edge because Flowers had a very up and down couple of minutes after that.
The taunting don't matter on the recce's in Yorkshire, do they, Johnny? It doesn't matter when you're in the faces. It on the biggest stage. Lancashire, sorry, not Yorkshire, that's Lancashire. Right. My apologies. Andrew, Lamar Jackson, let's go on him because he is the front runner for MVP. But the conversation is going to come up again, like it did a few years ago. He's 2-4 in the playoffs. He's not been to the Super Bowl at all in his career. He's had teams where he potentially could have done. He could definitely have had a lot more playoff wins than he has. He's coming off what I think is his best season. It may not be his best statistical season, but I think it's the best season he's had in terms of moving away from this one-trick pony style of play that people branded him with. Where does he go from here, and what do you think he's taken from this game?
I don't know. He's just kind of turned into like the opposite of Patrick Mahomes, isn't he? He's an absolute stat machine and phenomenal through the regular season, and then come the playoffs, his production dips slightly. Whereas Mahomes is, all right in the during the regular season, or I think Mahomes is good during the regular season. I think if you used Eli Manning as an example, I know as a Giants fan, he was really average during the regular season, and if he got to the playoffs, he then stepped up and performed more in the playoffs. And I think that's something we really now need to start looking at with Lamar Jackson and seeing if he can progress from that and overcome it. That not only just in that one, but through the playoffs, improves and pushes and moves forward. It's an area that he now needs to be better at, because during the regular season he's phenomenal, and then production drops a little bit in the playoffs. So he's still young. He's still got areas he needs to work at. And I am confident in the Ravens that they're not going to mark this down now as going, we've missed our opportunity in our window. I think they've got a lot of youngsters, a lot of good pieces, a lot of good defenders that are all going to be coming back. So I think they'll go, let's build on this, and we can run this again and try and beat the Chiefs again next year. I think there's some teams out there that would be thinking, we've missed our opportunity, our window, we're losing some older players. But I think he's got something now to work on and progress. And I think that's always good as a sportsman, to have something to work on, and he can look forward to doing that next time he gets to the playoffs and having more production in the playoffs itself.
It's certainly going to be I think he's going to be the MVP. So he's not walking away from this with nothing, I suppose. But I suppose he's probably a Super Bowl over another MVP. I can imagine. We'll move on to the second of the games, the NFC Championship game, which was the 49ers beating the Detroit Lions 34-31. Johnny, they were all over them in the first half. The Detroit Lions, they went into the half looking really, really good. I forget the exact scoreline. They're 24-7 at the half, and then the 49ers came out, swinging and connecting all of their punches. But I really, it sort of flips away from the AFC, doesn't it? Defense did really well. Offense was quite lackluster, came away from the game plan. Whereas the Lions, they really came out and they really showed themselves to be a team that is definitely keeping their game plan alive and knows exactly the direction they want to go in. How impressed were you with the Lions in this game?
Yeah, it was obviously a stunning start to the game. Rushing touchdowns from Jameson Williams within, I think, was it the third or fourth play, followed up by the other two running backs, Montgomery, and then Gibbs got the third one, didn't he? The line showed what they've been doing so positively this year, and the 49ers defense really struggled to get any sort of any sort of stoppage going really in the first couple of quarters. Beside obviously the touchdown score from Christian McCaffrey, but yeah, it was obviously a game of two halves, and take nothing away from the Lions. They went out and played, I think, the game that they'd always, and this is how they've played for the majority of this season. So I've got no qualms in, obviously I'm sure we'll talk about some of the decision making, the questionable decisions, even in the first half, that decision to kick the field goal rather than doing what many of us expected, the Lions to go on the 4th and short to get a touchdown to make it 28 or 28-7 going into the half. But yeah, taking the 3 points instead. It was the Lions will obviously take a lot from this, and it's disappointing for them, but I think they can hold their heads high. I think they have showed a lot of resilience this year, and a team that everyone likes. I think to follow and support in these big games. And obviously they've had good news as well with their offensive coordinator staying on. So hopefully the band can get back together and put on a show coming back next year.
They've just been really enjoyable to watch this year, haven't they, Andrew? I mean, they have turned the corner, and I think we'll talk more about Dan Campbell in a moment. But really, since he's walked through the door, this team's just gone from strength to strength to strength. And I mean, you look at their draft class they had this season that have just all played at a phenomenal level. I mean, I part of me, I know I went the Lions, and because I even though I probably thought 49ers were going to win, but I like the Lions to win because I thought they could bring that tenacity. But they didn't fail, like Joe said, they didn't fail to stay true to who they are in this game. And it was, gun-ho and exciting and fun. And they are, I know we joked in the last pod, I said the sort of America's team, the team that America wants to support. And obviously Adam took a little bit of offense to that given their divisional rivals with the Packers. But they're a joy to watch, aren't they? They're a joy and yet frustrating all at the same time.
Yeah, it's been a great story to follow, and I think there's a lot of fans now. Now we've seen a couple of teams that have sort of risen from being some of the worst franchises in history into being able to qualify and make these runs in the NFL. I think that's what we all love about the game, is the fact that any season can be the worst to the best. We've seen it with the Bengals. We've seen it technically with the Browns, the Jags, and now with the Lions. And I think that's why we all resonate and love the NFL so much, because this is a possibility, and the Lions have been fantastic at it. I know we were talking in the group about the Lions and the fact that Ben Johnson is staying there. And I think when you look at them as a team and go, Brad Holmes is absolutely fantastic at drafting. He's had 2 really good drafts. They've got a very, very young team. Most of the players are all coming back. I don't think they've got many free agents, and I think they've got something like they've got a load of draft capital. I think they've got like 8 picks, and 4 of them with like a first, a second, and 2/3. So they can definitely. This isn't like a one and done for them either. They can build on a team that's already strong. I think they was there a comment that Dan Campbell said that they were just happy to be there, sort of thing, and this might have been their only shot. I don't think that's correct. I think there's no reason why they can't do this again, because they're only going to strengthen next year. But little bit of inexperience for them, but you're going to have that when it's the first time you've ever been there.
Well, yeah, I mean, my friend who's a Lions fan has said the whole time since being in the playoffs, is I'm not fussed if we go out now, because this is just an incredible journey. I never thought that we would get to this stage, let alone get into an NFC championship. So he's just been enjoying it. And that's what has been really, really refreshing actually this year, is that the Lions fans have just been like, this is just incredible. Like, I never thought it was going to happen. It's been a long time coming. I didn't think it would be me. I thought it maybe a few years, but there's always been a sense, Johnny, that this team is doing something. And one of the players that we have chat is Jared Goff, who has often been the butt of jokes and has often been moved around, and I mean the Rams moved off him and went for Stafford in that massive trade, and even though he got them to a Super Bowl, they and he's really proved this year. I mean, sort of a lot of the haters wrong, don't you think? Or is this again maybe more of a Ben Johnson being a great OC than Goff being a fantastic quarterback?
No, I think you've got to put huge credit to Goff, and for what he's been able to achieve. Of course, there are a lot of talent, a lot of emerging talent around him. We know how good the Lions have utilised their offensive weapons like Gibbs, Montgomery, the way they just seem to run you to death. Jameson Williams obviously in this game was outstanding with his rushing and ability, and if they can just get the ball into his hands, see what he can do next year. I'm looking forward to seeing him. But Jared Goff's the leader of this offense. He personifies, I think, the grit and the sort of comeback kid sort of mentality that the Lions are all about. And they'll be left wondering what could have been, especially going into halftime of with such a big lead against the Niners. But I think that's just part of the storyline. I agree with Andrew. I think they will be back. They've got a great chance next year if they can. They've kept Ben Johnson around. Obviously, that was. I think we fully expected him to leave, especially for the Commanders. But yeah, so that's huge positive news. And Goff, I think, is probably expecting a newish contract fairly soon. I think he's deserved it, and the Lions are in a good place to continue progressing under him for the time being.
I'll go a little bit back to Andrew's point he's made a second ago with the drafting of this team that Brad Holmes has done for the GM, and I'm just reading the names off the stat sheet. I mean, you say about the youth fit: Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and then on the other side, Malcolm Rodriguez, Aiden Hutchinson, Brian Branch. I feel like Ali McNeil's fairly young as well. These guys have got. How important do you think it is when teams look at other teams that you solidify certain positions, like Penei Sewell as well, another young player? They've got key components all across the park, but have solidified in the right places, haven't they? At the tackle position, the cornerback position, corner / safety in Brian Branch, I suppose. They've got their edge rusher. Like, when teams are looking around, are they all trying to do that? Are they all trying to do that in the draft? Is get them pieces that are like, sort of your four top pieces of your quarterback, your tackle, your edge rusher, your corner, to complete this team and to go on a Super Bowl run?
Did you ask me that or Johnny?
Yeah, and I asked you because you're the draft expert.
Sorry, I thought you asked Johnny. I was like,
I
was going to answer in a minute.
I'll switch off for a minute. I was hoping you're going to answer.
Would you like me to repeat it, but don't repeat it? Because I was a lot longer than I should have been, really.
I mean, give me the main point if you want.
Main point was that the Lions have drafted the what people would see as like the biggest positions for you to win a Super Bowl, but then they've also filled it with youth talent around. Do you think other teams are going to be looking at the model that they're doing and trying to recreate it? Because it is a young squad.
I think what they've installed is, in a way, don't go by the book and what you should and shouldn't do. Get the players that you like, and if you're really hot on them, they'll fit into your game plan because you've bought into them and you think you're good. They were mocked a lot this year for taking a running back, a linebacker, and a tight end, and not looking at the key positions. But when you look at what they've done over a 2-year span, if you've got a game plan in your head, you took the best edge rusher the year prior, you took another good defensive player in the year before. I think that's now going to be a testament to people to go, you don't need to be, or it has to be a cornerback, an edge, or an O lineman. If you like a running back, take a running back. If you like a tight end, you take it. If you like a safety, take them. Because it's worked. It's worked for them and it's worked well. And they've seen what talent they've got. And I think that's the key to drafts now. Going, where is the talent? How will it benefit my team? And let's not think about what the pundits and the people analysing and talking behind the scenes go, this is what you should take. Because they don't know your organisation. They don't know your 5-year plan. So, I think that's a testament to them and what they've done. That they've done it their way and it's worked.
Because I love that as well. I love that, Jahmyr Gibbs, for a lot of people, was going to be low-end first, going to the second. Sam Laporte was maybe going to be a first-round pick at the end. Jack Campbell was definitely, in some people's view, a third-round pick, potentially. Brian Branch was sneaking into a couple of people's first rounds, but that was it. And they went, no, we're taking Jahmyr Gibbs here. They took him when everyone said as soon as Bijan Robinson got off the board that there wasn't anyone else outside of Gibbs that was left, and that people would probably wait on him because he could not be as good. But their first 4 picks were Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, and Brian Branch, weren't they? And I mean, all 4 of them have just been. It's been my favorite draft class. It's been my favorite draft class for a team. I think Brian Branch. I mean, we'll talk a little bit on him, I think, now, because he's sort of been ignored, I think, Johnny, in the whole defensive rookie of the year conversation, because I feel like everyone's sort of going on Jalen Carter. I think Brian Branch has been transformational for this defense. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. He's been, he's completely transformed what was quite a weak secondary in Detroit before this year, and he's possibly one of the best rookies that we've seen this year. And yeah, he's obviously feeling the love a lot in Detroit, and I'm sure will be a big part of the Lions defense for many years to come. They've got so many emerging talents. You mentioned McNeil and the defense. If they can add a few more pieces, I think the defense has to be the finding those studs, because I think at times against the Niners the Lions looked quite tired, and potentially the Lions weren't able to keep their offense on the field for long periods in the second half. That possibly played a factor. Aiden Hutchinson was having to do a lot of the heavy loading in terms of try, and I'm fully expecting them to get another couple at least this year, because that's what the Lions have done for the last few years. But yeah, I think they're very, very well placed for the future with the emerging stars that they've got.
Well, we'll finish up. We're talking about with Dan Campbell, Andrew, because I mean, he has been, since he's joined the Lions, he's been in the media a lot. A lot of people have joked about him. A lot of people have said that he's too emotional, that he's sort of a very blue collar, old school style of coach. But at the same time, I think he's got that mentality, that grit. He was an ex-player himself. I mean, he wears heart on his sleeve, clearly. Obviously, the Hard Knock series that showed a lot of him involved in the coaching a couple of years ago. I mean, what do you think of the job he's done? Because I feel like he's reinvented Detroit football.
Yeah, we spoke a lot about head coaches over the whole season, and ones that we didn't think fit and ones that have done better than we thought. And when we're talking about characteristics of what a team will need, Dan Campbell was perfect for them, because he is a motivator and is a culture setter. The culture at Detroit was they have some decent players and they're just rubbish and they just lose. And he's changed the culture there and turned it around so they can believe in themselves. And I think, when we talk about the genius minds of Sean McVay and Shanahan and people like that, or that tactically or are just genius, and they can make a game plan that wins games. He brings culture and motivation and working well with the youngsters. And I think because he's got come from a playing background, and he is slightly from an offensive side of the ball with the tight ends, that he then knows what will make a good coordinator. And I feel this is why he's such a good head coach. He's more of like a CEO head coach rather than a coordinating head coach. And I think sometimes that's what a team needs, and he's nailed it. So time will tell if Ben Johnson does leave if they have another successful year and he moves on. If he has got that talent in being able to pick coordinators, and if he finds the next Ben Johnson and it works, then Dan Campbell should be up there to be told that he's a great head coach and he does know what he's doing.
Johnny, you sort of mentioned it earlier, though. Do you find that sometimes he is maybe too aggressive with the play callings. We saw a lot of people have already blamed him for this loss. I would argue that a fumble and a ball that should have been easily intercepted was more of a factor than Dan Campbell being a bit risky. What do you think? Because he's always done that. I have to give it to him. That's the only thing I'd say. He's got a brand and he sticks on it. He doesn't wave off of it, which I do quite like.
Perhaps I think I don't read too much into it, because exactly like you say, the Lions have been this aggressive for all of the season. That's who they are. That's how they play. Whether that's right or wrong, that's what's brought them success to get them to the NFC Championship games. There's obviously decisions that, in hindsight, I would change now. I referenced the first one where Campbell, I think, on probably any other occasion, it's difficult to say in hindsight, but I think he would have gone for the fourth down rather than taking the field goal at the end of the second. Yes, okay, he's up two touchdowns and then a field goal, which is a very comfortable lead, but that would have been a real sucker punch in the Niners. To have that at half time. I think, obviously a couple of the other fourth down decisions, largely, I think we can largely blame them perhaps on obviously the one that did make in the Gibbs fumble. Those can go either way, and I don't have any qualms against the Lions going for it as they have. Experience, I think, like this and losing this game in the way that they did will probably alter their decision making for the next time they're here. And that's not just Campbell. I think some of the play call, even right at the very end when there was a minute to go and they didn't get it with the Montgomery run, they had to burn a timeout. That's on both the offensive coordinator and the head coach. So I think it's all part of this learning game for the Lions. They've done incredibly well to get here, and the way that they've done it is being aggressive and with that mind plan. It's just about perhaps sticking to that, all throughout the game, or when it comes to those sort of big games with so much on the line. That they alter and stick to their judgment for that particular scenario.
Right, well, we'll move on to our final topic this evening. Only 5 minutes left, so we'll try and cram a little bit of this in, admittedly. It's the head coaching hiring cycle. There's a lot been going on. We have the LA Chargers have hired Jim Harbaugh. The Las Vegas Raiders have hired Antonio Pierce, but he was the interim head coach. They made him a full-time head coach. Jared Mayo's new Patriots coach. Brian Callahan, the new Titans coach. David Canales, the new Panthers coach. Raheem Morris, new Falcons coach. And in the last hour, Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, has been announced as the Seattle Seahawks coach. There's general managers movement as well. But I'm going to stick firstly on with Andrew, because LA Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, I don't think you'd have to go very far back in this podcast, but you definitely said this. And if anything, there's been multiple podcasts that you have said this. And how pleased are you with Harbaugh going to the Chargers?
Yeah, it's an absolute great decision. I think I searched my text messages to find out, and it was August that I could find. Wow. August was the first time that I mentioned it in the group that they should sack Staley and go for Harbaugh. Obviously, at that point, he was just going into a ban for the start of the season with Michigan. I thought he's not going to enjoy being banned for something so small, and he's going to want out. And where could he go? But he talks about how this is where he wanted to be, and I think it's a perfect opportunity. As I said on our little clip, for me, it was the best job available because it's got a quarterback and it's got a good O-line, and it has some nice defensive pieces. Whether they can keep all of them, I don't know, because it was the most expensive defense in the league last year. But he's brought Jesse Minter over with him, which is absolutely fantastic.
Who's Jesse Minter? Sorry.
So I said I had to you in a text message. I had a little story about this. If we've got time for it, I'll bang it out quickly. So. Michigan had trouble beating Ohio, and they could never beat them. And then Harbaugh was like, I need to stop this. I can't win. I can't get to the playoffs unless I beat Ohio. So he phoned his brother and said, the reason I can't beat Ohio is because the wide receivers are too quick and too shifty and too good. How do I beat them? Have you got anybody in your organization so I can have a Ravens-styled defensive back system like you've got? And at the time, they had two guys. They had Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald, who weren't head like coordinators at the time. And he said, they're both exceedingly talented. You can have whichever one you want. So he interviewed both, and he loved both of them, but still was unsure. And Harbaugh said, take McDonald, see how he goes. So I think Minter ended up going to another one of the college teams. And then Harbaugh had a great year, Michigan, with McDonald, and his brother wanted him back in Baltimore, so took him back, and he was straight on the phone to Minter and said, you're my next option, I want you in. So they both come from the Ravens, and they both come from that same style and same background. So you're going to get a similar styled defense to what Mike McDonald's just done at the Ravens. So it's worth his weight in gold in having the pair of them come straight into the organization and turn it around. And I think another big thing that I was banging on about is how small of a brand the Chargers was in that city. I've spoke about it a lot, the fact that they, even the college teams, the baseball teams, the Rams, they're all bigger, the basketball teams, all bigger than the Chargers. And since Harbaugh's been there, they've been all over the news, all over the billboards, all over everything. He's going to create so much revenue and bring so much more to that team than just the head coach that it's a fantastic hire for me. I mean, the owners, Spanos, have been chipped at for being cheap, but I think Harbaugh's going to pay for himself in sales and season tickets because people are going to want to watch him coach this team. So absolutely fantastic hire for me.
I completely agree. I think it's going to be a great watch. We will go probably into more depth about these new coaches in the offseason, but Johnny, very quickly for you. Antonio Pierce, they didn't make the same mistake twice. They did, what was his name? Rick. It was the guy they had last year. It was who was the interim, and everyone was like, you should have kept him. And then they got rid of him. They did the Josh McDaniel, the McDaniel hire, and then obviously that went pants. And then they got Antonio Pierce, and they've got, no, we're going to stick with this time. How happy are you for him? Because he's really done a really good job for the Rays. I'm really pleased for him there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we saw from the players on, Max Crosby and those alike who were so positive about Pierce, on a team that went through such a difficult year once again, with so much expectations on them, a roster which is pretty meh, but they are fully behind Antonio Pierce, and they made that mistake. It was it Rich Bisaccia?
Rich Bisaccia,
who was there? A couple of years ago. They should have hired him when they had the chance, and they can't make that second mistake twice. Someone who knows the organization, knows the players. You essentially want something like, not necessarily saying he's an incredible play caller or etc. He's in the mold to me like Dan Campbell, in terms of you want someone who players are going to want to play with. Let the play calling and let the geniuses of the offensive and defensive coordinators and their coaches, coaching staff alike, do that sort of thing and build that atmosphere through the head coach. I think that's something that we might see a bit more of. I think obviously talked about with the success of Campbell. Let's hope that Antonio Pierce can bring a similar sort of thing to Las Vegas, because I think we definitely saw an improvement with him in charge on an interim basis last year.
Well, it's certainly, I'm certainly very, very pleased for him for sure for getting that job. And thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Johnny, for joining me this evening. Apologies we've not talked about the Super Bowl teams, Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers, but that will be in our Super Bowl episode next week. Commiserations to the Baltimore Ravens and Detroit Lions, but well done, because it's been a long season and you've both done tremendously well. I know it's not the Super Bowl, but you've still had a really remarkable season. We'll be back next week, and I hope you have a good weekend as we prepare the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. See you soon.